What if I told you that the country the Western world has misunderstood for decades is also the country that gave the world its first declaration of human rights, invented the postal system, and created the religion that directly shaped Judaism, Christianity, and Islam? What if I told you its greatest secrets were buried by conquerors, mistranslated by enemies, and deliberately erased from your history books? This is Iran, and you have no idea what it actually is. What is Iran really? The name they changed. Most people in the West know this country as Persia, but here's something almost nobody tells you. The people who lived there never called it that. Not once. The name Persia came from the Greeks. They named the entire empire after one small province in the southwest called Parsa. It's like naming all of America after one county in Georgia. The people themselves called their land Arianam, meaning the land of the Aryans. Not in the corrupted, racist sense that word later acquired in Europe. In the ancient sense, Aryan simply meant noble or free person. It described a class, not a race. In 1935, King Reza Shah formally asked the world to stop using the name Persia and start using the real name, Iran, the name his people had always used. It was an act of cultural reclamation, a declaration that this nation would define itself, not be defined by outsiders. And that tension between what Iran actually is and what the outside world says it is runs through thousands of years of its history. Iran sits on one of the oldest continuously inhabited pieces of land on Earth. We have evidence of urban settlements in what is now Iran dating back to 4000 BC. That's 6,000 years ago. Before Rome was a village, before Greece had written language, before the pyramids of Egypt were built. The earliest known writing in the region, a script called Proto-Elamite, predates even Mesopotamian cuneiform. Iran wasn't catching up to civilization. In many ways, it was helping to invent it. The world's first superpower, and what it actually believed in. In 550 BC, a man named Cyrus II changed the world. He was the king of a small Persian tribe in the province of Parsa. In just 30 years, he conquered the Median Empire, the Lydian Empire, which was one of the richest kingdoms on earth, and then the Neo-Babylonian Empire, one of the greatest powers of the ancient world. By the time he was done, Cyrus the Great had created the largest empire the world had ever seen, stretching from modern-day Greece in the west to the borders of India in the east, from Central Asia in the north to Egypt in the south. An empire that size could only be held together by military force, unless you were Cyrus. Because Cyrus did something that almost no conqueror before or since has ever done at that scale. He let everyone keep their religion, their customs, their language, their local leaders. When he conquered Babylon in 539 BC, he didn't loot the temples or enslave the population. He walked in, freed the slaves who had been held there, including thousands of Jewish captives, and allowed everyone to return to their homelands. He then had a small clay cylinder inscribed with his policies. That object, now called the Cyrus cylinder, sits in the British Museum in London today. A replica of it stands in the United Nations building in New York. Nobel Peace Prize winner Shireen Ebadi called it one of the most important documents in the history of human rights. Think about what that means. 2,500 years before the UN Declaration of Human Rights, a Persian king was proclaiming freedom of religion, freedom from forced labor, and the right of displaced peoples to return home. His empire didn't survive forever, but the idea it represented, that an empire could be built on tolerance rather than terror, became one of the most radical political ideas of the ancient world. Before we go any further, if you've never heard any of this in a history class, that's exactly the point. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, and smash that like button. It genuinely helps this kind of content reach people who need to see it. Because what we're about to talk about next will change how you understand religion itself. Zoroastrianism, the religion that shaped the entire world. Long before Cyrus built his empire, an Iranian prophet changed the nature of human spiritual belief forever. His name was Zoroaster, or, in the original Persian, Zarathustra. He lived somewhere between 1500 and 1000 BC. Scholars still debate the exact date. And what he taught was so radical, so ahead of its time, that you can trace its fingerprints through Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the three religions that dominate the modern world. Before Zoroaster, most ancient religions were polytheistic. Dozens of gods, each with their own agenda, constantly fighting and bargaining with each other. Humans were basically caught in the middle. Zoroaster introduced something revolutionary. One supreme god, Ahura Mazda, the Lord of Wisdom, and opposing him, a force of evil and chaos called Angra Mainyu. Sound familiar? That cosmic battle between a supreme good force and a supreme evil force. That concept entered Persian thought through Zoroastrianism, and it directly influenced the Jewish understanding of God and Satan during the Babylonian exile, which then fed into Christianity, which then fed into Islam. The concepts of heaven and hell, judgment after death, a final apocalypse, the resurrection of the dead, all of these ideas appear in Zoroastrianism centuries before they appear in Jewish or Christian texts. Zoroaster's core moral code was almost painfully simple. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. That was it. No complex ritual system, no priestly class controlling access to God. Just live well, think well, speak well. This was the official religion of the Persian Empire for over 1,000 years. And yet almost nobody in the West learns about it. Today there are only about 100,000 to 200,000 Zoroastrians left in the world, mostly in India, where they are called Parsis. They fled there after the Arab conquest of Persia in the 7th century AD. But their religion quietly shaped the spiritual DNA of half the world. Persian women had more rights than any civilization on Earth. Here's a fact that almost never makes it into popular history. In ancient Persia, women could own land, run businesses, command armies, hold government positions, and receive equal pay for equal work. We know this not from legend, but from hard evidence. Thousands of clay tablets discovered at Persepolis, called the fortification texts and treasury texts, dating to the reign of Darius the Great around 500 BC. These tablets are essentially ancient payroll records, and they show men and women doing the same jobs and receiving the same rations and wages. Women who had exceptional administrative authority were given the title Arashara, which translates as Great Chief. Royal women weren't decorative figures either. Queen Atossa, the daughter of Cyrus the Great, was one of the most powerful figures in the Achaemenid court. She influenced succession, commanded political alliances, and by some accounts effectively controlled who sat on the throne. This is happening 5 centuries before the birth of Christ. In the same era when Greek women were legally classified as property, when Roman women had no political rights whatsoever, Persian women were running government departments and leading military units. The most popular deity in early Iranian religion was Anahita, a goddess associated with water, fertility, wisdom, and war. The fact that the most widely worshipped divine figure was female tells you something important about how Persian society thought about power. This history has been buried, partly because it contradicts the narrative of the ancient Middle East as uniformly patriarchal. and partly because so much Persian administrative history was destroyed by Alexander the Great when he burned Persepolis to the ground in 330 BC. The loss of those records is one of the great tragedies of world history. The Assassins of Alamut, Iran's most terrifying secret sect. In the mountains of northern Iran in the 11th century AD, a man named Hassan-i-Sabbah took over an impregnable mountain fortress called Alamut, and from that fortress he ran one of the most feared organizations in medieval history. His followers were called the Nizari Ismailis, a Shia Muslim sect that had been persecuted and pushed to the margins of the Islamic world. But in the West, they became known by a different name, the Assassins. The name comes from the Arabic Hashashin, though historians still debate exactly what it originally meant. What's undisputed is what these men did. They were trained killers, fanatically devoted, who carried out precision political assassinations across the medieval Middle East for nearly 2 centuries. Crusader leaders, Sunni caliphs, rival commanders. A knock on the door, a dagger in the night. And then, nothing. The assassin would make no attempt to escape. He would simply wait to be killed, believing he was fulfilling a divine mission. The psychological terror this created was as powerful as the physical threat. You could have 1,000 guards, it didn't matter. If Hassan-i-Sabbah had marked you, you were already dead. The assassins operated from their network of mountain fortresses for nearly 200 years. They were only finally destroyed when the Mongols swept through Iran in the 1250s, systematically demolishing every fortress in the mountains. But their legacy lives on, in language. The word assassin entered English directly from Arabic, through the Crusaders who fought against them. Every time someone uses that word today, they are unknowingly referencing an 11th century Iranian mountain fortress. We are not even close to done. What the Mongols did to Iran next is one of the most catastrophic events in all of human history, and almost nobody talks about it. But first, what's the most surprising thing you've learned so far? Drop it in the comments. I want to see what's hitting hardest. And if you're watching this without being subscribed, now is the moment. Let's go. The Mongols destroyed the greatest library in the world. In 1258 AD, the Mongol armies of Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, arrived at Baghdad, the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate. It was the intellectual center of the Islamic world, and arguably of the entire civilized world at that time. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad was the greatest library ever assembled. Texts from ancient Greece, Persia, India, and China had been collected, translated, and preserved there for 5 centuries. Algebra, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, the knowledge of the ancient world had been accumulated in that single place. The Mongols burned it. Contemporary accounts describe books being thrown into the Tigris River in such quantities that the water turned black with ink for days. Scholars estimate that hundreds of thousands, possibly millions, of manuscripts were destroyed. The Mongols didn't stop at Baghdad. They swept through Iran, destroying cities that had stood for thousands of years, massacring populations, obliterating irrigation systems that had kept Persian civilization fed for millennia. Nishapur, Merv, Samarkand, cities that were among the largest and most sophisticated on earth, were reduced to rubble. Some historians argue that the Mongol invasion was the single greatest civilizational catastrophe in human history. It ended the Islamic Golden Age. It erased knowledge that has never been recovered. And yet, Iran survived. How Iran survived everything, and why that matters. This is the thing that makes Iran unique in all of world history. This is a civilization that has been invaded by, take a breath, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Greeks under Alexander, the Arabs, the Mongols, the Timurids, the Ottomans, the Russians, the British. And in the 20th century, it was the target of a CIA-backed coup in 1953 that overthrew its democratically elected prime minister. Every single time, the conquerors came in expecting to replace Persian culture with their own. Every single time, it was Persia that absorbed them. When Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire, his successors, the Seleucids, became more Persian than Greek within 2 generations. They adopted Persian court customs, Persian administrative systems, Persian dress. When the Arabs conquered Persia in the 7th century and brought Islam, something extraordinary happened. The Persians accepted the new religion, but they also transformed it. They brought their own philosophical traditions, their own literary culture, their artistic sensibility into Islam. The result was something new, a Persian Islamic civilization that produced some of the greatest poetry, mathematics, and philosophy in human history. As one historian put it, Iran was Islamized, but it was never Arabized. The Persians remained Persian. When the Mongols destroyed everything, Iran rebuilt. The Safavid dynasty rose in the 16th century, reunified the country, and created one of the most spectacular artistic cultures the world has ever seen. The architecture of Isfahan, the miniature paintings, the poetry of Hafez and Rumi. Rumi, the 13th century Persian poet whose books still outsell virtually every other poet in the world today, including in the United States, the country that has sanctioned Iran for decades. His words about love, loss, and the search for meaning are read by millions of people who have no idea they're reading a Persian mystic from Khorasan. That is the story of Iran. A civilization so deep, so resilient, so culturally rich that nothing, no conqueror, no empire, no catastrophe has ever been able to erase it. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Iran is not a modern political story. It's not a news cycle, it's not a flag or a government or a headline. It's 6,000 years of human civilization. It's the birthplace of human rights law, of monotheism, of equal pay, of postal systems, of algebra, of some of the greatest literature ever written. It's a people who have survived everything and kept creating beauty on the other side of every catastrophe. The history you were taught was incomplete. It always is. The question is what you do with that now. If this video changed how you see Iran or history, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to see it. These videos take weeks of research, and every share puts them in front of people who would never find them otherwise. Subscribe if you haven't. We drop videos like this every week. And in the comments, what's the one thing from Iran's history that you think everyone should know? I read every single one. Links to all sources are in the description. Go deeper.